Hey, it's News from Heaven. Today we're talking about how real faith is simply recognizing that something is true. And I gotta say, I'm a little surprised that you clicked on this episode. Because it seems like whenever we put faith, something, in the title, some people click on it, but not that many people click on it, which asks this interesting question. Why is faith so boring? I mean, why isn't that something that grabs people? I think it has to do with what people understand that word to mean. I think it has a lot of purchase inside particular religious groups who talk about faith as a thing that is a part of their life. But to people that are just outside that, there's not a lot of spillover in value. People that think it's something that's relatively empty. And what people who don't have that link to something inside of them are looking for, what we are all looking for, us and regardless in our more practical mind, is we're trying to deal with the issues in our life. Right? We have things like people that we worry about for whatever reason. We have situations that we dread or wish we could experience. We have questions. We have longings, all these things. And we want to know what's up with all that stuff. And how is this our word of the day? How is faith? What is it? How does it relate to that? And I didn't think it was recognizing that something is true. I thought it was the opposite of that, right? How are we going to break through and have this concept, which fits seamlessly into Swedenborg's world, be something that brings us the answers, not just to theological sounding questions, but to these questions, the stuff that's really going on for us. This is from Teachings for the New Jerusalem on Faith, part of the Faith Life composite PDF you can download for free. Okay. Here it says, faith is an inner recognition of truth. Nowadays, and here we go, so the same issues I think people have with that term faith now were extant back then. Nowadays, people understand faith to mean nothing more than thinking that something is true because the church teaches it, and because it is not obvious to the intellect. Oh, there's a sub point, because if the church teaches something like, you've got to open the door to walk through a doorway, okay. But if it's something the church is saying that your mind wouldn't have come up with on its own, is that what faith is? In fact, the common saying is, believe and don't doubt. Isn't that, and when people talk about faith, don't you have faith that God exists? Even though it seems like God doesn't exist because all this stuff happened in your life and you don't see God. When you look out, you see things like houses and trees and people and problems and questions and all the things in the clouds that we were just looking at. But if you have faith, you still believe in God regardless of that, right? Is that what it is? If someone replies, I don't understand it, and let's not even say, like, what's it here? It could be God, but it could be something more like, believe Jesus came and died for your sins. But wait, what does that mean? Is the Father was angry and there's multiple people in God? I don't know if I believe it. That's your faith. Or whatever, insert religious concept X there. People say, that's why you have to believe it. If someone says, I don't understand it, that's why you have to believe it. You don't get it, do it, because that's what faith is. So you can see how to people who are outside some kind of loyalty to a religious construct, this can seem like, how is this of any value? Because you look at the world that we live in now, the amazing things we have these amazing cell phones, which have gotten easier and easier to draw. They just look like a rectangle now. We have these amazing other things, satellites. Oh, don't even try. There's medicines. This is a nano robot. Look at that. Look what we've accomplished here. And none of that's come through just believing something. That's come through doubt and through investigation and the scientific method. And look it's unlocking. So you might say, how does something like faith fit into something as beautiful as and amazing as this world that we inhabit here? How did he get this job? I don't know. The result is that today's faith is faith in the unknown that can be called blind faith. And since it involves a decree from one person to another, so, hey, listen, I'm religious figure X, and I'm telling you, believe this. It's a faith handed down from the past. It's not even like that you came to this on your own. People can come to religious convictions, spiritual awakenings that don't travel through methods that you could easily replicate and fit into boxes that we can put physical observation in. But that's like say somebody has a near-death experience or somebody has some kind of epiphany. You can have that fire burning for you, but a lot of it when we're in religious institutions is just, this is somebody else telling you, have that fire, love that, believe that, have it. So it's a faith handed down from the past. So we can start to see why this isn't the thing that makes everybody say, oh, I'd love to click on that and watch that video. It will become clear in the following pages that this is not a spiritual faith. So just to believe something because it's hard to believe, and believe something because you are told to believe it by some kind of spiritual or religious institution, that's not what spiritual faith really is. So what is it, and how is it something that actually makes life better than not having it? Real faith, okay, I think we're getting into a definition here. Real faith is simply recognizing that something is so because it is true. Okay, I mean, come on. What do you mean? So we have to dig deeper into this, obviously, because otherwise that would be, well, I have real faith because I know this pen is here. But actually, as soon as I said that, I started to think, well, how could you tear that down? Isn't this pen mostly empty space? Isn't it mostly just charge? Is life all a simulation? This means that people who are devoted to real faith both think and say, this is true and that's why I believe it. So a state of faith, you have some kind of inner affirmation that this thing is true. And how do we get there? That is, faith is dependent on truth, and what is true is the object of faith. So in the big picture, what Swedenborg would describe as faith, this crucial part of our opening to remember what is actually out there, according to this religious figure. Is that a little strong? This like YouTube talker. There's God. So if we're accepting the overall Swedenborg's premise, which you don't have to do, by the way, there's so much other content. You can go soaring off into so many other things. The World Wide Web is open to you. Library, everywhere. All the information you could possibly have is in front of you. Go sift through it, find what you think is true, and if in sifting you found something in the Swedenborg worldview that you feel like, wait, no, this is where I want to stay, then let's go on those premises. So that is that there is God, and that we are people here. The effort of the divine, the will of the divine, is to flow into us with truth and with love. But there has to be, sure, it seems like they could go right in, but when you get down to where we really operate here, to get these to come in, there has to be some sort of means. There has to be a mechanism by which we can have little receptors that then channel that stuff inside of us. So, one of these receptors, or an element of these receptors, is what we call faith. So how do we build that thing? How do we get it the help we need from God? So if we do not understand, and this then, we start to hit a real difference here. And I think one that sits right when it hits you. So if we do not understand, so that is, faith is dependent on what is truth, and what is true is the object of faith. Oh yeah, what I was going to zoom out and say is, according to Swedenborg, the spiritual faith is seeing, I'm sorry, I got to zoom back out here, is seeing this spiritual reality. So this is one component of it, the existence of God, the difference between what's good and true and what's evil and false, and where that leads us on our trajectory. Should we follow it? The layers, heaven and the mind, and the way that our life here can put us up into these different things. What to behave, what not to, how to behave, how not to behave, all these things, sort of the larger picture of what's spiritually true. Faith is just to see with open eyes, oh yeah, that's how it is. Rather than be stuck in this world where we have these narratives we tell about other people to ourselves. We have misperceptions in the belief that we're the center of the universe. We have the sense that life is chaotic and random and nothing matters. All these things, whatever it is it's getting at you, that's the opposite of faith, because we're seeing false things and believing they're true. Whereas faith is seeing the spiritual side of life and that it's true. But look at what this does to our interaction with things that we're told to believe. So if we do not understand that something is true, we say, I don't know whether this is true or not, so I don't believe it yet. How could I believe something that doesn't make sense to me? It may be false. This is the opposite. This is the opposite of being a decree comes out to you that says you must believe this thing, and you're graded on whether or not you believe it and believe it strongly, and that's what faith is. Now we're saying, well, no, faith is getting to the point where one of these, maybe these same spiritual teachings, we can see for ourselves, or we have come to our own valid belief that it fits our picture of rationality. And then we say, I believe this because of this. Okay? But I'm still wondering, what exactly is faith? All the same, the widely shared opinion is that no one can understand things that are spiritual or theological because they're supernatural. Oh yeah, right. How are you going to believe this stuff in the first place? However, spiritual truths, and this is really the thesis of a lot of what Swedenborg is trying to unpack here. Now it is one of the famous Swedenborg sayings, if you're into Swedenborg, is this thing that he saw written on a temple in the spiritual world when he was visiting there. It said, now it is permitted to enter with understanding in the mysteries of faith. That how God works, how life after death works, what it is, what our soul is, what it is to develop, that these things can make rational sense. The good and evil, the problem of evil, all these things can be seen, and they can make as much rational sense as we can piece together the rest of the world to get. They can be grasped just as earthly ones are, perhaps not as clearly, but still, when we hear them, we do get a sense as to whether they're true or not. There's no substitute for, we have such direct access to the physical world. You could just interact with that thing ad nauseum. We can collaborate on it. I don't think we were looking for to be able to see the spiritual things as distinctly as that. In some cases, people do, but that's usually through extrasensory, some kind of out-of-body experience. But for our minds, what we're trying to get, and this is interesting too, as we're trying to define faith. Get a sense as to whether they are true or not. So not because somebody else said do it, but is it feeling like, are you feeling it? Does this seem true to you? And if it doesn't, anything I'm saying in these videos, anything anyone else is saying, not that it doesn't mean it's true, because we can be wrong about things all the time, but just know that that's a space that we gotta work until we can't put it into the faith until there's some assent that it feels true. So just know that's on my to investigate shelf. This is especially so in the case of people who have a longing for truth. Okay, so there's a link here between longing for the truth and this sense as to whether when we hear something it's true or not. And what's a longing for the truth? I mean, of course you have a longing for the truth, but actually there's times when we don't have a longing for the truth. For example, there's a fundamental truth. So if we're saying the bedrock truth here is that people are equally conscious. I'm suddenly wondering if I spelled that right. Who cares? People are equally conscious. People are equally valuable. People are equally people, right? This is definitely something that I'm interested in learning when I've been pushed down by life and I'm feeling like, or I'm seeing and understanding the suffering of others and I want to help them. Oh yeah, this is really true. But if things are going really well for me, and especially if I feel like, hey, I'm getting up to the top, here I am, I'm the king, and I'm like this, maybe I had to harm some people on the way to get there, I'm not looking for that truth here. I'm looking for something else that can placate my conscience about where I am. So some kind of justification. Wow. Justification. Pretend that's what that says. I'm looking for a falsity to go with my state of self-centeredness. So we're not always longing for the truth, but actually this longing for the truth is faith. If faith, Swedenborg defines in places, I don't know if he does it here, as an affection for what is true. So faith is a love for the truth. And this longing, you long for something that you love. This longing is what makes it so that when you hear the truth, you actually get a sense of it. Because and what is a longing for truth other than love, that what we're experiencing here, which is love for the human race, or love for what is good, which is a longing for God and what God stands for, which is that we can all be nice to each other. I've been taught this by an abundance of experience. I've been granted the opportunity to talk with people who lacked education, people who lacked common sense, and people who lacked intelligence, and with people who, despite having been born in the church and having therefore heard something about the Lord, faith, and caring, were convinced of false ideas or were immersed in evil. So he's just saying, look, these are all people who would have, you would think, roadblocks to understanding something as lofty as the spiritual truths. And they're different kinds, right? Some people weren't giving the means. Some people had a state of mind. Some people weren't taught. But all of these people, I've been granted the opportunity to tell them secrets of wisdom, and they understood and acknowledged everything. At such times, of course, they were in the light of understanding that is common to us all, and also in a state of glory because they were in a condition of understanding. This happened during my interaction with Spirit. So if the longing is put in there, even for temporarily, you can understand, when the love and the wisdom have to go together. This is something true across Swedenborg and everywhere. There are two grand forces in the universe. There's the wisdom, right? And then there's the love, right? And these two go together to make a whole, and they long for each other. This is what life is about, is uniting these two things. So when you have one, it wants the other. And that's what's happening there. This is why the people who have an inner recognition of what is true are those who have a spiritual love for truth. Since angels have this love, they flatly reject the dogma that our intellect must be subject to faith. To angels don't want the intellect to be subject to faith. You think that, isn't that what makes you angelic? Is to say, I believe this even though I don't get it. On the contrary, they say, is there any such thing as believing something without first seeing whether it is true? And if someone says that we must nevertheless believe, they reply, do you think that you're God? That I should believe you? Or that I'm so crazy that I will believe some statement in which I see nothing true? Make me see it. Then the adherent of dogmatism slinks away. Oh, burned. Mic drop from the angels. This is maybe not something that actually has happened. He's creating a piece of theater for us to get this concept. But look at what's in that retort that he's assigned to angels here. It's like, first of all, who do you think you are to tell me what I have to believe? That there's got to be this universal protection mechanism, because aren't there just myriads and myriads of stories of people who are in some kind of religious position of authority? There's a million documentaries about these cults that people get in, and one person is really charismatic and magnetic, and these people, and this person says, here's what you have to believe about life, and the people just can't. They get sucked into it, and their lives get destroyed. They lose all contact with their families. They lose all their money. It's just in the worst cases, they talk about drinking the Kool-Aid. That comes from this cult where they went down to South America and everyone drank poison and died. So there's a mechanism where people are innately, which can be compromised, obviously, but innately reject. You can't just tell me to think this thing, because how do I know that you have good motives, and how do I know that you know the truth? It's better for us to be looking for the truth on our own. Doesn't mean you can't listen. Doesn't mean you can't weigh it, but all anyone can ever do is give you concepts, and then you take them back into your world, and you and the Lord look over them and see, whether or not they're true. The angel's wisdom consists entirely in seeing and understanding the things they're thinking about. So, faith is to see something that's really true. Faith is to long for the truth because of the good that it will do. To to develop. So if we say like we're going to work on faith, how do I get faith? To develop a longing for what's good that leads to a longing for what's true. To be on a search for the truth. Who doesn't say that that's admirable, to be seeking the truth? So that is faith, our will to go out and seek the truth in every situation. Almost not being satisfied that I know this thing, but can I know it more? And all for the sake of goodness and love. That is something worth clicking on and bringing into our lives. And that's the news from heaven. How'd it go? Did you like it? Is that idea of faith a more useful tool you can plug in? If it feels incomplete, there's much more in this book. You can download it for free, read it there, get more. Actually, next episode, we're going to dive into that a little farther, just a few numbers down in this book. So join us for that. And join us for the Off the Left Eye experience, which is coming up this summer. Register if you haven't already. We get to hang out for a whole weekend with the Off the Left Eye crew and take these ideas, go into them and see, how can we improve lives with them. Leave a comment. Let us know how this stuff is affecting you, and is it leading to the search for truth, that kind of good faith, and which is really at its core a will to improve the world. Thanks for thinking it over with me. Talk to you soon.